Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your very, very kind words for Vietnam. And thank you to CSIS as a whole for hosting the very meaningful meeting today to show that Washington is reopening, as you said. Dear Dr. John Hamre, President and CEO of the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, ladies and gentlemen, today I'm very, very happy to visit the CSIS for the very first time. Though this is far from the first time I have heard of the CSIS, a top U.S. think tank in the field of foreign strategies and policies and international issues. 77 years ago, President Ho Chi Minh, the great national hero of Vietnam and great man of culture, prefaced the Declaration of Independence of Vietnam with this untarnishable fact: all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That was in 1945. Our President Ho Chi Minh said as much, quoted in the Declaration of Independence of Vietnam. This was also the spirit enshrined in the 1776 Declaration of Independence of the United States of America, demonstrating a common universal value shared by our two countries and also by mankind as a whole. We are all elated to witness the extraordinary growth of the relationship between Vietnam and the U.S. in the 3 decades following normalization. That relationship has flourished and blossomed, so to speak, thanks to both sides' efforts nurtured by sincerity, trust, and a sense of responsibility. Sincerity, trust, and responsibility. By sympathy, sharing, and mutual respect pursuant to the interests and desire of two countries, nations, and people. Our two sides have overcome differences and reached common foundational principles for this relationship. This was established in the Vietnam-U.S. Joint Vision Statement back in 2015 during the official visit to the U.S. by General Secretary Nguyen Phu Trọng. The statement stressed, and I quote, respect for each other's political system, independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. That is in the Joint Vision Statement all the way back in 2015. Respect for each other's political system, independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity, a very special step indeed. In the letter sent to General Secretary Nguyen Phu Trọng in 2021, President Biden stressed that the comprehensive partnership between the two sides has been very vibrant, that we have been building is based on respect for the independent sovereignty and territorial integrity of each other. So President Joe Biden said as much in his letter to General Secretary Nguyen Phu Trọng. Vietnam highly appreciates the constant support by the U.S. over the past years for a strong, independent, and prosperous Vietnam. Over the course of 27 years following normalization, 4 consecutive U.S. presidents have paid visits to Vietnam one after another, each leaving very good impressions in the heart of the two peoples. Since the beginning of President Biden's term, various high-level U.S. officials have visited Vietnam, even during the height of the pandemic back in 2021. Even during that difficult time, U.S. officials still came to Vietnam, including VP Kamala Harris and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. In November last year, when I attended COP26 in Glasgow, President Biden and I had a meeting. It was a very short meeting, but very meaningful one at that. The foundations I've touched upon have given me faith and joy in my visit to the U.S., my first visit as a Prime Minister of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. I thank you Dr. Hamre, President of CSIS, for inviting me to your discussion today, taking place in an exceptionally special occasion, and I thank you for your keen interest. Our discussion is all the more meaningful taking place as it does on the eve of the ASEAN-US Special Summit. This is the first face-to-face meeting since 2016. It demonstrates the determination of ASEAN and US leaders in promoting cooperation for peace, stability, and prosperity in the region and the world. The international landscape is witnessing deep, rapid, and unpredictable changes. All of us, governments and people and scholars alike, must step up collaboration more than ever before to engage and share ideas to build a better world together. In my remark today, desiring to stress the importance of sincerity, trust, and responsibility for a better world, I would like to share with you my thoughts on these things. First, how Vietnam sees the world today. Second, the role of sincerity, trust, responsibility in a turbulent world as we have today. I stress three things here. Sincerity, that's the most important. Trust in each other. And third, a sense of responsibility to one another. These are the three things I would like to stress during the discussion today. And the third topic is what we need to do in order to express sincerity, trust, responsibility for a better world. Ladies and gentlemen, into the third decade of the 21st century, peace, cooperation, and development remain the ardent desires of the peoples of the world. Yet these aspirations are facing the most trying time since the Cold War ended. Globalization, international economic integration, and the world economy itself stand before new opportunities for development, especially with the advancement of the Fourth Industrial Revolution brought to the table. Yet the COVID-19 pandemic, along with the geopolitical, geoeconomic, and strategic competition, are creating breakthroughs in the state of the world with unpredictabilities and multidimensional impact on the security and developmental environment of various countries, and there are interwoven opportunities and challenges. A mere few years ago, few could have foreseen 6 million would perish due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Equally few could have predicted a conflict erupting in the middle of Europe. These events have caused immense consequences on the security, political, economic, and societal landscape of the whole world. One can say that while the world on the whole is at peace, there might be localized wars. While it is on the whole indetente, there might be localized tension. While it is on the whole stable, there might still be localized conflicts. We are all aware of this. All of this is giving rise to the risk of war and instabilities confronting the world economy with many hazards. Meanwhile, competition and confrontation are giving rise to decoupling in politics, security, and economy. On top of this, traditional and non-traditional security challenges such as climate change, natural disasters, resource depletion, energy, water, food, and human and cyber security, and many others are still developing in very complex ways. This state of affairs greatly affect various nations and their efforts to realize the United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. We must then be fully aware of both opportunities and challenges facing peace, cooperation, and development in a rapidly changing world. Of these two aspects, the challenging side seems to be more prominent. Our efforts for cooperation therefore is required if we are to effectively tackle the state of affairs. From that global and regional landscape, and the reality of Vietnam's diplomatic undertakings thus far, most recently its ASEAN chairmanship in 2020 and non-permanent membership of the UNSC for 2020-2021, I have the following key observations that I would like to share with you. First, peace, security, and development are organically linked. Peace, security, and development of a country will affect its own neighbors, as well as the region and the world. Second, the interests of each nation-state must respect the legitimate interests of other states grounded in international law and the UN Charter. Third, international integration is an inevitable course if we are to preserve peace, promote growth, and advance friendship among nations. No country, no matter how rich or powerful, is able to address everything on their own, especially global issues. Instead, there must be cooperation with other countries, the international community, and its populace. Global issues would require a global approach and international cooperation to settle, in which multilateralism is upheld. For instance, in the fight against COVID-19, we can see this. No country can be safe if they remain a country that still have to fight against the pandemic. No person can be safe if there are others infected with COVID-19. The same goes for climate change response, environmental pollution, and resource depletion. Fourth, all states and nations desire a better world, and peace and well-being for each and every of their people. Therefore, we must place special importance on the human factor, viewing human beings as a center, the subject, the purpose, and the engine for the development of all ties of collaboration and partnership in international integration. While global issues require a global approach, whole of people issues must be addressed with a whole of people approach. And all policies must aim towards the people and encourage their innovation and cooperation. Fifth, international integration is objectively speaking a matter of course, but in this process, each country must rely on its internal strength as a fundamental, strategic, long-term, and decisive factor, while external resources are an important, necessary, constant, and game-changing element. Or, as we say it, we must know how to combine national power with the power of our time in a judicious and effective way. Ladies and gentlemen, sincerity, trust, and a sense of responsibility play an essential role in addressing those issues facing the world today. It is a lack of sincerity, trust, and responsibility being one of the causes for tension and conflicts in many places, and we can see this. Deficiency in sincerity and trust is a major hindrance to cooperation among countries, be it bilateral, and also to collaboration in responding to regional and global challenges. Therefore, more than ever, we need to promote the building and cementing of sincerity and trust among countries. At the same time, each country needs to conduct themselves in a responsible way. Foremost of all, each must respect their own commitments and observe international law and the UN Charter. They must respect the independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of each other. And they must respect the chosen political system that another country has chosen that is supported by that country's people. They must contribute to the common work of the international community according to their own ability. We must uphold dialogue to understand each other more in order to address the differences and disputes among states. Equitable and mutually beneficial cooperation on the basis of mutual respect is one of the best ways to settle existing issues among countries and build a better world. Faced with the unpredictable and complex turbulence across the globe, we must think seriously and responsibly so that for no reason shall this paramount avenue be disrupted. Only through sufficient sincerity, trust, and responsibility may countries work together to address issues substantively and effectively. The ASEAN itself stands testimony to the value of sincerity, trust, and responsibility, evident in its contribution to addressing regional and global issues. Located in between the Pacific and Indian Oceans, ASEAN has been making every effort to play a central role in the regional architecture that is taking shape. Its members are joining hands to build an ASEAN community according to its 2025 vision. Rooted in the common ground of sincerity, trust, and responsibility, ASEAN is playing its role in making all efforts alongside its partners to build a world and regional landscape for peace, stability, cooperation, and development based on international law and the UN Charter. The ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific stresses openness, inclusivity, based on cooperation and dialogue with all parties concerned. ASEAN has established and is bolstering its network of strategic partnerships with most of its key partners, including the United States. ASEAN hopes to join these partners to build sincerity, promote trust, take responsible actions, and advance cooperation on the basis of respecting the independence, sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political system of each other, respecting international law. It seeks also to bolster international cooperation and in this way address global challenges, including COVID-19 and climate change and the protection of the environment, to name a few. These are global issues. Ladies and gentlemen, as an active and responsible member in ASEAN and the international community, Vietnam always makes every effort to contribute to dialogue and cooperation and stands ready to play an active and positive role as befits its capacity and standing. Those of you who look to Vietnam may ask me, how then does Vietnam demonstrate this sense of responsibility in the wake of regional and international issues? You will be aware that from the yoke of colonialism, Vietnam claimed independence from a divided country. We stand united today. After a heroic struggle from a poor country, backward country, we have risen through our efforts to become a medium-income country and well on a path to realize the development goal of our aspiration. By 2025, Vietnam shall be a developing country with modern-oriented industry having graduated from lower middle income. By 2030, it shall be a developing country with modern industry and upper middle income. By 2045, it shall be a developed high-income country. It is important to note that Vietnam's aspiration for development is inseparable from the aspiration for peace, stability, cooperation, and development of the entire region and the world at large. I hope that the U.S. and other partners will be keen on cooperating with and assist Vietnam in realizing the strategic vision in a sincere and effective way. At the same time, this would open up great opportunities for more comprehensive and deeper cooperation between Vietnam and the U.S. and other countries alike. Let me now touch on and clarify Vietnam's views on how it demonstrates sincerity, strengthens trust, and bolsters responsibility in its cooperation with other countries, the region, and the international community. First, Vietnam perseveres with its foreign policy line of independence, peace, friendship, cooperation, and development. It seeks to diversify and multilateralize relations. It is a good friend, a responsible member of the international community. Vietnam has always been consistent and transparent in making and conducting this policy line in a sincere and trustful way. Second, between independence and dependence, our choice is always independence in the spirit of nothing is more precious than independence and freedom, to quote the great President Ho Chi Minh. But between negotiation and confrontation, we choose negotiation. Between dialogue and conflict, we choose dialogue. And between peace and war, we choose peace. Between cooperation and competition, we choose cooperation. And competition, if it exists at all, must be healthy, respecting the legitimate and lawful interests of each other. In a world full of turbulence, strategic competition, and a great many choices, Vietnam picks no side. Instead, it chooses justice, fairness, and goodness based on the principles of international law and the UN Charter. It chooses equality and shared benefits for all and triumph for all. Third, Vietnam is ready to engage in dialogue and cooperation to address differences and disputes, thus contributing toward peace, stability, and development. At the same time, we seek to ensure a balance of interests and satisfactory handling of the concerns of different partners, countries, and the international community. It is for this reason that in the settlement of disputes and conflicts in the region and the world, including the East Sea, the South China Sea, a critical sea to the countries within and beyond the region, we always seek to maintain peace, stability, ensure security, safety, freedom of navigation and overflight, preserve the legitimate rights and interests of parties, address disputes through peaceful means via dialogue based on respect for international law, especially the UNCLOS 1982. We stand for the effective and full observance of the Declaration of Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea, DOC, and are working towards the making of a Code of Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea, COC, that is concrete, effectual, and in line with international law, including 1982 UNCLOS. There are two main issues in the East Sea. The first is the opposing claims on territories over waters and islands, and the second is the freedom of movement, of navigation and overflight. The first being the territorial disputes. Vietnam perseveres and resolve to use the peaceful means to address the matter through peaceful means, through diplomatic negotiation. That is Vietnam's clear position. And when it comes to the safety and security of navigation and overflight, we must remember that this is the jugular vein of maritime transport, worth 60% of global maritime transportation. Therefore, protecting the safety of these vital maritime routes is a responsibility of all countries in the world, and we call upon all countries to work together with Vietnam to do this. And of course, we must implement well the DOC and work towards the building of an effective COC. This is something that all the countries in the region are working on. However, this has to be based on international law, including UNCLOS 1982. In order to contribute responsibly to common international and regional matters, Vietnam takes the initiative to join and plays a role in multilateral mechanisms, especially ASEAN, the United Nations, and other regional, interregional, and Mekong sub-regional mechanisms according to the requirements and our own capability and particularities. Vietnam has been positive, proactive, and responsible in its role as a non-permanent member of the UNSC for the term of 28, 29, and 2020, 2021. We have been part of this council twice. Vietnam directly takes part in the UN peacekeeping forces, having sent its servicemen to this mission since June 2014. Late April last year, Vietnam sent a combat engineer team of 184 officers to Abyei, Africa, and a second-level field hospital with 63 servicemen, 10 of whom are servicewomen, to the mission in South Sudan. These have been some very concrete contributions. As a country having undergone much turbulence and understands the losses after many wars for national liberation and reunification, Vietnam stands ready to contribute to the reconciliation among countries and states. We are perhaps one of the countries having undergone too many wars, especially during the 20th century. War followed by embargo, and we feel in our heart the value of peace. And we have to say that Vietnam is a peace-loving country. Vietnam is a destination was a venue for the second U.S. DPRK summit. Regarding the Ukraine issue, Vietnam supports and stands ready to take part in the efforts and initiatives of the international community in facilitating dialogue among the parties concerned in search for long-term enduring solution. Vietnam has provided $500,000 in humanitarian aid to the Ukraine, despite its own difficulties. On this matter, it is Vietnam's consistent position to respect the UN Charter and the principles of international law, to respect the independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of states, as well as their legitimate interests, and to address all disputes through peaceful means without use or threat of force. This is Vietnam's consistent position. During the COVID-19 pandemic, while itself facing great hardships, Vietnam still donated face masks and medical equipment to 51 countries, including the US, and helped to fund the COVAX facility worth millions of dollars. Let me take this opportunity to express our gratitude and applause to the international community, including the U.S., for the donation of vaccines in large quantities to Vietnam in the effort to combat the pandemic, especially the U.S. establishment of a CDC regional office for Southeast Asia in Hanoi on the occasion of VP Kamala Harris' visit. Let me also clarify that the U.S., through the COVAX facility, and in its own right have provided millions of doses of vaccine in donation to Vietnam during our hardest time. And we owe our control of the pandemic to the donation of vaccines. Of course, there's also the part of the effort of the entire Vietnamese people and political system. But the vaccines remained the most important weapon in the fight against COVID-19. Though still facing a great deal of socio-economic difficulties, and as a developing country, Vietnam expressed its responsibility and very high resolve in climate change response, and will fulfill its pledges under the Paris Agreement in order to, as well as under COP26, in order to achieve net zero emission by 2050. I've had a lot of discussion with the academicians. Vietnam is a developing country. Vietnam is still a country, still a poorer country, but we are still determined to achieve net zero emission by 2050 in order to do our part to protect our planet. But this has to be undertaken in a fair and just way, and we call upon developed countries to help the developing countries and help the countries at a lower stage of development, help them build the institutions, help them in technology, help them in financing, help them in managerial capacity, and help them in human resource training. Only then would the poorer and less developed countries be able to fulfill the commitments in the same way as the richer countries have made to protect the planet. That is the spirit. Vietnam has been advancing economic and trade relations with most countries in the world. Vietnam has negotiated 15 FTAs, opening up an open market with 60 partners in the world, including all major economies, including the United States. This is an expression of responsibility towards free and open trade. We've been very active in concrete and effective international integration through this network of FTAs and, of course, through other mechanisms. But you can see that the network of free trade agreement is a very good indicator of Vietnam's active international integration. Ladies and gentlemen, Vietnam always desires to strengthen its cooperation with the U.S. on the basis of bolstering trust and responsibility of both sides in the interest of the two peoples and of peace, cooperation, and development in the region and the world. I have had quite a few meetings since this morning, and I've always repeated this, if I'm to inform you. And I believe this is something that we see very much eye to eye. To fulfill its national development targets, Vietnam cannot go alone. To go far, we need friends. It is not only today that Vietnam expresses its desire to work with the U.S. President Ho Chi Minh, our hero of national liberation and great man of culture, from the very first days of the new democratic republic, expressed his desire for an equal and comprehensive partnership with the U.S. in his letters to the U.S. government in 1946. That a letter on 16th of February, he wrote this: "Our goal is independence, full independence, and comprehensive partnership with the U.S." That was all the way back in 1946. President Ho Chi Minh raised this matter to the U.S. Vietnam and the U.S. have gone a long way in the process of expressing sincerity and building trust to each other. First of all, the two sides earnestly joined hands in a concerted and determined effort to address war legacy issues. Vietnam has been active and very effective in its cooperation with the U.S. in the search for U.S. KIAs and MIAs. Vietnam welcomes the U.S. efforts to address war legacy issues alongside Vietnam through dioxin remediation, support for persons with disabilities and Agent Orange victims, removal of UXOs, and cooperation to search for the remains of Vietnamese war martyrs. Moving forward, the two sides should advance cooperation in addressing war legacy issues so that our two peoples would have more empathy with each other and work together towards the future. Since normalization after 27 years, cooperation in war or legacy issues is a highlight in our bilateral relations. And from this, our two sides have been able to step up our expression of trust and sincerity. And I hope, and I have just had a discussion, very heartfelt discussion, with the President pro tempore of the Senate, of the U.S. Senate, and he is in agreement with me on this matter. Since the beginning of normalization in 1995, the relationship between the two countries has grown steadily across the board. Allow me to go over it. Politically, the two sides have been each other's comprehensive partners since 2013 and have reached an agreement on the matters of principle in this relationship, most importantly being the respect for each other's political system, independence, sovereignty, territorial integrity, mutual beneficial cooperation, and respect for the UN Charter and international law. The U.S. most notably always desire a strong, independent, and prosperous Vietnam. So this is a very important foundation. Economically, the U.S. is Vietnam's second largest market, while Vietnam is the U.S.'s largest market in ASEAN and 9th largest in the world. The Vietnam-U.S. trade agreement in 2000 was a launchpad that helped take the relationship between the two countries above and beyond. Bilateral trade last year, against all odds due to the COVID-19 pandemic, still reached almost 112 billion US dollars. So that is, compared to 1995, that's an increase of by almost 280 times. And let me repeat that we are also the U.S. largest market in ASEAN. In education and training, Vietnam has the largest number of visiting students in the U.S. among Southeast Asian countries, with some 24,000 Vietnamese visiting students during 2019-2020, contributing $1 billion to the U.S. economy in this field alone. The Fulbright University Vietnam has provided high-quality human capital in a timely manner to meet developmental needs in many sectors and professions in Vietnam. People-to-people exchanges, most remarkably, are also steadily growing. So education and training, a very great highlight. This is, you can see that the benefit is beyond measure because of how many students in Vietnam are studying in the U.S. This number is only increasing. Of course, there are students and fellows who go to study through scholarships, but the majority are funding their education by their own families' financing. Defense and security cooperation continues to progress through concrete and meaningful results in the spirit of the Joint Declaration and Vision Statement on Defense Cooperation in 2015. The two countries are also working very well together on a wide range of international and regional issues, from nuclear weapon non-proliferation, counterterrorism, responding to climate change and sea level rise, to safeguarding food and water security, safety and security of navigation, nuclear security, and the maintenance of peace and stability and promotion of cooperation in the Asia-Pacific, among others. Ladies and gentlemen, given the groundwork of the relationship over the past 3 decades, we need to maintain the sincerity, respect, and responsibility in addressing war legacy issues to heal the wounds to the two nations and nurture the relationship between the two sides to greater heights for the future, to befit the potential and the aspiration and the interests of the two nations and contribute to peace, cooperation, and development in the region and the world. As the two sides have iterated during the visit by General Secretary Nguyen Phu Trong in 2015. With the U.S. and many other countries looking towards the Indo-Pacific, while Vietnam is advancing its development goals, our two countries are standing at the threshold of new opportunities to raise this relationship to greater heights, especially in economic, trade, investment, science, technology, digital transformation, education and training, combating climate change and epidemics, and people-to-people ties, and in addressing regional and international matters of concerns. Together with traditional matters, we also need to look towards future areas. I wish to stress three areas where there are a great deal of potential going forward, being green growth, digital transformation, and supply chain diversification. Vietnam views green growth as a key mission to build a sustainable development space for happiness for today and, more importantly, for generations to come. To achieve its pledge of net zero by 2050, we pay special attention to drawing on resources, science, technologies, and managerial expertise and institution building capacity to develop clean energy, modern infrastructure, and sustainable water management, among others. We also see digital transformation and innovation as a major driver of the global economy going forward. Vietnam, therefore, is making all efforts to ride this new wave of digital transformation to forge ahead and narrow the developmental gap. This involves advancing comprehensive digital transformation through three pillars: digital government, digital economy, and digital society. At the same time, Vietnam is making every effort to take part in the global value and supply chain, especially through diversifying its supply chain to meet the essential need of the world today. Vietnam will continue to be a reliable destination for international businesses, including U.S. businesses. In the effort to diversify the supply chain in a turbulent world, green growth and digital transformation are two areas in which the U.S. is among the top of the world. The U.S. economy is also the largest in the world, with an expansive and diverse market. This is a solid foundation for the diversification of supply chains across the globe. The combination between the U.S. world leadership in this matter and an increasing vigor and deepening international integration of the Vietnamese economy will open up enormous opportunities for cooperation between the two countries and the two sides' business communities going forward. Ladies and gentlemen, sincerity, trust, and responsibility are the key for all countries to address outstanding differences and disputes in a turbulent world today. That sincerity, trust, and responsibility are also a major contribution to the strong growth of the relationship between Vietnam and the U.S. over the past nearly 30 years. I trust that these shall also be the through line to guide, advance, and take the comprehensive partnership between Vietnam and the U.S. to greater, more effective heights going forward. The General Secretary Nguyen Phu Trong, in his visit to CSIS in 2015, stressed that the two sides need to set aside the past, overcome differences, build on similarities, and look towards the future. At the White House, President Obama also said that a constructive relationship between the two countries on the basis of mutual respect and in the interest of the two people. It is my hope that all of you and all of us would stand together and contribute to the nurturing of trust, sincerity, responsibility between our two countries. Certainly, this would be a concrete part in the interest of our two peoples and for peace, stability, cooperation, and development in the region and the world. I wish you health, happiness, and many successes. And thank you for your kind attention.